I didn't need a new NAS, but I really did need a new NAS. So I got a new NAS, and we're going to talk about NAS things for just a little bit. If this is your first time getting a NAS, or this is going to be your first NAS, then this video is for you. If you want to know how to transfer your old NAS over to a new NAS, I've made a very simple video showing you how to use rsync, and that is going to be next after this video. So give it a few days and then check back to the channel and you'll see that video. But right now what I'm going to do is talk about the first things that I do when I get a new NAS. Hopefully this will give you some ideas on the things that you can do and ways that you can secure your NAS, set up some backup, and just get it ready for everyday use. So my old NAS is the ASUS Lockerstor AS6704T, and it's nice and fast. I really like it, but a new one came out, and well, like I said, I didn't feel like I really needed to get a new one. I really like what they've done with this. It's like, this is like the most loaded NAS that I've seen that's like geared toward home use or small business and stuff like that. I mean, you could use this for a pretty big business actually because it's so fast. So they've upgraded to a quad-core 10 nanometer Intel Celeron N5105 CPU. It's 30%, it's actually 31%, so they say, but around 30% more performance compared to the last one. Then we have two 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports in the back. Having the onboard 2.5 gigabit Ethernet and two of them is a huge plus for me because I also was able to pick up a couple of the ASUSTOR 2.5 gigabit switches, left them running for multiple days, about 110 hours of just full-blown data transfer. A lot of times with the faster Ethernet, you'll feel that they're getting a little bit too warm, but this one was totally fine. When you get this NAS, go ahead and grab one of these, especially because a lot of the motherboards that you get nowadays do have 2.5 gigabit built in. Some of them have 10, and you want to make sure that that was also, will also be compatible with 2.5. But even if you do not have this on board, it's like $30 to get like an internal 2.5 gigabit adapter, or you can get a USB adapter, and I'll put some links to those in the description. Having that has allowed me to essentially use the NAS as if it were just a hard drive. It's just as fast as like an internal hard drive. The difference in speed between 1 gigabit and 2.5 gigabit is pretty huge. So this is a 4K copy of Ghost in the Shell, the old anime from 1995. It's a Blu-ray, and I ripped that to the hard drive. It's about 50 gigabytes, 49 and some change. Now when I transferred this using a 1 gigabit connection, it took over 7 minutes, like 7.5 minutes. But when I switched over to a 2.5 gigabit connection, just transferring that from my NAS, I went through two ASUSTOR 2.5 gigabit switches, just so you know. Took under 3 minutes to transfer that entire 50 gigabyte file. If you're transferring like entire volumes or something huge like that, you're going to save yourself so much time, it's ridiculous. Now you could do link aggregation, but I think if you need more speed, the best thing to do would be to swap out the M.2 for the 10 gigabit Ethernet on the top. Now that I've told you the NAS that I've gotten, and I've made my recommendation, and thanks very much for ASUSTOR for sending this over. I did bother them because I was going to upgrade. So after you've picked your NAS, it's time to pick your hard drives. And I've picked these Seagate Ironwolf Pro 20 terabyte drives for a few different reasons. One, they're not as loud as the Exos drives, and they're around the same price. The new version of the Ironwolf Pro doesn't use any exotic technology, which I love. And if you scroll down here, as long as you're getting this version of the drive, they have the same mean time between failures when compared to the commercial grade Exos drives. And the other thing that's really nice about the Ironwolf Pro is they have an app that you can get right here. Right here inside your ASUSTOR App Central, you can grab the Ironwolf Health Management. Just install that. And once that's installed, whenever you click on your storage manager, and look at your different drives here. You can click on drives or volumes to get here. There we go. They all have the little Seagate Ironwolf logo and the Ironwolf Health status, and that will let you know how things are going. And we can even set up and schedule some, click on Disk Doctor here. We can even do some scans and set up, Ironwolf Health Management, set up some weekly or monthly scans to make sure there's no bad sectors. And then you'll get a heads up, like a little email saying there's a bad sector whenever there is one. So you can know when it's time to replace that drive. But that's likely not to happen for years and years and years and years. So I recommend the Seagate drives above all else because really there's not much else in this, at this high level that's this quiet, that's this fast, and it doesn't use any weird new exotic technologies. This is all standard 7200 RPM, 9 platters though, like a lot of platters in there, but it's just standard hard drive technology, nothing weird and new. So really nice that they've been able to create that. If this is your first time having a NAS, you may be thinking, I'm just going to have one big lump of storage and I just one share, just my one, whatever it is, just my NAS. And then I'll just have a folder for games, a folder for music, a folder for movies. And I'm going to tell you that is not the best idea, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, the reason I like to set up different shares is because of permissions. So I've got a games folder here and a media folder. I don't want everyone to have access to all these folders. So if I have different people in the house, like if I have kids or friends or someone else, or even someone remotely that you want to be able to give access to your NAS, well, you can set it up so that they have, their own login and all that stuff. So what we'll do is we'll just show you real quickly by creating gamer person. There we go. All right, so we just have this person here called gamer person, and I want to define the roles of this. Yep, they're just a default user, and then we're going to give them access to the different shares here. Well, I can say, okay, this person, this is deny access, read and write, and this is read only. So they have read only access. That means they can get access and they can install stuff from that device. But that's it. That's all I want to give them access to. Next. They can also have access to Jellyfin so they can watch some shows. So there, I've just set up a new person and they only have access to that one share. This is not possible if you put, everything in one share and just have a folder in there that's called games. So it's really, really good practice to set up different shares so that you can have different permissions for different people and let them access just granularly exactly what you want them to access. You can also set up groups. Now, groups are cool if you want to say okay, let's just set up a new group and say that it only has access to certain folders. Then whenever you add any of these members to any of the groups that are out there, we don't have any groups set up yet, but whenever you add them to the groups, it'll give them the folder rights and also the application rights based upon that group. So it's pretty easy. The first thing that most people are going to do is install their hard drives. However, I like to remove all of the drive bays and set them aside first to make the unit a little bit lighter so I can move it around. And then I take off the cover using the 3 screws on the back. It's really simple. You can't miss the screws because they're attached to the case. Just remove those 3 screws.
This is where your LCP comes out and discovers the wondrous house you have gifted him.
Now we have access to the insides of the NAS, and as you can see on this unit, we have 4 empty M.2 slots. Now, here's what you need to know about the NVMe. You can use this for caching. So you set up a huge volume of data, and then you use that super fast NVMe for your caching drive. Now, you can only use 1 NVMe per volume. So if you just have one big volume of data like I do, you're going to need 1 NVMe for that. The others that you put in there, you can set them up as additional storage or other volumes. You can actually remove those and then swap it out for 10 gig Ethernet. You'll just need to install an app that lets you switch between NVMe and 10 gig Ethernet. You can also use this for RAID. So if you want to install several large M.2 in here, you can do that and run RAID. Then if you flip the NAS unit around to the other side, you'll see a hidden spot there behind this little protective cover, and that is where you can install some more RAM. Now there's 4 gigabytes of RAM already pre-installed, but you can get another SO-DIMM and install it right here. It can use an additional 4 gigabytes of RAM, and this unit will use 2400 megahertz RAM. So just grab a stick of 2400 megahertz DDR4. It's laptop memory, by the way, so make sure you get the DDR4 laptop. But what I actually did to grab this is I went online and I looked up memory specific to this model. So if you've got this model, just go ahead and type that into Google and then type memory, and you'll see several different modules available out there. And after that, I'm ready to install the hard drives. And what I like to do is lay it down first so that I'm not trying to hold it up on the desk and having it flop around or anything. Install 1 screw while it's down, and then you can turn it on its side and hold it, and then you can easily install the other screws that way. That's how I do it. Make sure you're doing this in the middle of the desk and not on the edge in case it starts to fall, it doesn't flop into the floor or something. So just be careful while you're installing your hard drives. Once you get all of your hard drives installed, it's time to put them into your NAS, close them up. They should clip into place very easily. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and tell you how to do that. It comes with 2 Ethernet cables in the box, so thanks very much for that, ASUSTOR. Both of those are going to be handy since we have the 2 2.5 gigabit ports in the back. I'm going to plug up just one of them for now, and I'm going to plug up the power. You can also plug up HDMI. I'm just going to use the little screen on the front that has the readouts, and then I'm going to power this on. And you see it takes a second there. The first thing it's going to ask you is, do you want to initialize the NAS? And this is what you're going to want to do if you have new hard drives 99% of the time. If you're not initializing the NAS, then you're doing something different and probably higher level than what I'm doing here. So just go ahead and press the enter key, which is, if you see the 4 buttons there, it's the bottom right button. There's like a little enter logo or a return logo on there. Just go ahead and press that a couple of times and it'll initialize. Now it's going to initialize the entire environment and the drives, figure out what you've got going on with your system and get it all set up so that you can access the web interface. I usually just go through all the defaults because it sets it up the way I like it, and that is RAID 5, BTRFS as the file system, no longer using ext4, and that's a good thing. BTRFS is maybe slightly slower, but it has so many more features when it comes to deduplication, and you can look that up later on, but that's an awesome technology. And then it'll allow us to do snapshots, and that is something that you want on a NAS, and we'll get to that later, but it is so awesome. And it'll show the IP address right on there. You can just plug that in. The default port is 8000 or 8001 for HTTPS. It's a self-signed certificate, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to type in the IP address that we saw, then colon 8001. When we press enter, it's going to be like, oh, security risk. Just hit advanced or hit yes or whatever, depending on your browser, and then press accept risk and continue. It'll bring us to the initial setup login screen here. You have to make sure your JavaScript's enabled. If you're using a script blocker or something like that, it won't load. And here we are at the first main menu. All right, let's log in. The default username and password is admin. Admin. Hey, look, here we are. If there's any updates to the system, go ahead and click on update. It'll take a minute and it'll update to the latest version of the software and then reboot. This might take a few minutes, maybe up to 20. So go grab a cup of coffee and come back. Okay, once it's finished, it'll mess up the connection. So you just gotta like refresh the page. So accept the security risks, and now we're gonna log in again with the admin and admin for the password. All right, now it's giving us a security warning, and that's the first thing we're gonna do is lock this down just a little bit. It's using the default ports, and this can easily be accessed by anyone, so we do not want to use the default ports. You can change these ports. I'm just going to kind of randomize it and do 6555, sure. And for the HTTPS port, how about 6556? There we go. Now, if you want to access your NAS from external devices, you'll need to go into your router and forward these ports, or whatever ports you want to put here. Just know that you'll need to do that. The ASUSTOR can connect to your router in many cases, so it'll take care of it for you. But for those of us that are using DDWRT and stuff like that, it's probably easier just to do it manually. It's going to apply this, and now we're going to have to log in again. If it doesn't do it automatically, you'll have to go back up here, put in the IP and the new port, and then we're going to log in yet again. And here we are. So we need to activate our M.2. How do we do that? Just click on our volume again, click on management, and then click on SSD caching. And for the caching, I'm going to do just read only. When I'm writing, it'll write straight to the hard drives. Maximize. Feel like I was in Crisis 1 for a minute. All right, hit finish. Okay, so I'm going to basically wipe that drive. It's going to be an SSD caching device, and I found that this speeds up things quite a bit. Don't know what kind of voodoo it uses, but it's magic. Now, you can't do anything while this is doing its operation, so just wait. It only takes about a minute. I'm smart, so I've got my Ironwolf Pro drives in here. I'm going to make a separate video just talking about why I like these so much. So I'm going to install Ironwolf Health Management. Go ahead and install that. And this is the reason why I like to run RAID 5 with one drive failure, because this will show us as soon as the drive starts to have any bad sectors. Now, the drives can still be used when they have bad sectors, but this will notify us and say like, hey, it's got a few bad sectors. It's got a few more bad sectors. And usually right when a drive starts to get a few bad sectors, what I like to do is replace it as quickly as possible. You can let it go on for a little while, a few months if you want to, without much issue. It can get a few bad sectors, but you know, as soon as I start to see bad sectors, I start to think, you know, I'm gonna get a new drive and replace it. I've only had to do that a couple of times, and the nice thing about these Ironwolf drives is if they have bad sectors, a lot of times the drives are still completely functional. So what I do is after I take it out of the NAS, I do a low-level format somewhere else, and then I can reuse that drive, and they work fine. I've got another one that's been working for a couple of years after having a couple of bad sectors. So the first thing you should do is come over here, and we have an active administrator account with the name and password of admin and admin. So we need to change this password to something else that's not so easy. This is the first thing we're going to do. We're not even going to use this account, just in case you were worried about having an account named admin. We're not going to use it. Even though I'm going to disable this account, I still want to change the password because admin is not a good password. I recommend using a password manager to generate a password for this and then keeping that in your password manager. But right now I am just putting something quick. But yeah, put a good password in there. Okay. It's going to ask for your current password, which is admin. And this will be a similar process on other, NAS units and stuff out there on the market. You can go in and change your admin account name or change your admin account password and then disable it afterwards. But before we disable it, we need to create a new account. So I'm going to add a new user, the boss. There we go. That's our new name. This is the boss. And this is going to be an admin account. So let's go ahead and give it a password, something more difficult than what I'm doing. This is optional. You don't have to do that. User ID 1000, that's fine. Put in an email address. Now, what this is going to do is allow you to get notifications if something with your NAS goes wrong. We're creating this account. I want to define the user role and privileges, and then just go ahead and click on this user has administrator rights. So that'll make it an admin. You can send an email verification, but we need to set up an email account first. So let's go ahead and click on that and do that. So if you have Microsoft or a Google account, you can log in with that and use that as your server to set up the emails and stuff like that. If it prevents you from opening a pop-up, click on Options and then click on Show. Or I like to use my Microsoft account. If you have something you want to set up manually with your SMTP server import, you can easily do that. Now we've got email set up so that we can get email sent here whenever there's anything going on with the NAS, just any notifications of updates or any problems. So go ahead and hit finish there. Now we've created this new account called the boss, and that's going to be our admin account. So what I'm going to need to do now is log out from our admin account and log back in as the boss, and then we can disable this account. Click on our name admin there and hit sign out. Now let's sign in as whatever you set up as your new admin account. Now we come back up to access control. Click on your old admin account because now we're signed in as the boss. Hit edit and click on disable this account right there. Hit OK. I wish that the default account was not named admin, but I guess it's there for ease of use. Just use that from now on. The next thing I do to lock this down a little bit is just head over to App Central and grab an antivirus. Arguably this is not needed, but I've been running one on my other ASUSTOR for several years right now. Just hit accept and agree to all this nonsense. All right, we'll come back to the apps in just a minute, but I wanted to go ahead and get the AV all up and ready to go. Let's go to our settings first. Click on ADM Defender. Just a basic thing I like to do, auto blacklist. This is all I'm gonna do for right now. Hit apply. Now if someone tries to log into your NAS multiple times, they won't be able to. All right, the next thing you can do is start to install a few apps on your device. Which apps should you install? Well, I'll tell you what I'm installing, and then you can install whatever else you like. It's all about how you want to use your NAS. So there's something called Easy Sync Manager that's already installed. There are a few different versions of Nextcloud. Now, since I'm going to be using the Easy Sync Manager, I don't need Nextcloud. This pretty much does everything that does in a very easy interface with an app and everything like that. But if you're not using an ASUSTOR, you can get a copy of Nextcloud. Nextcloud is above and beyond OwnCloud. If you've heard of OwnCloud, it's essentially like Dropbox, but your own hosted version. So Nextcloud HTTPS is what I would recommend that you get. And it's very simple to set up, share different folders, and then you can install the Nextcloud app on your phone or on your PC and essentially have your own cloud backup, but it'll be local on your device here, and you can access it from anywhere that you have your Nextcloud app. I'm not going to install it here, but that's just something I would recommend that you do if you're not using Easy Sync Manager. And really, I don't do too much else because this is a home server. I use Jellyfin as my media player. If you like Plex, by all means. If you happen to like MB, there's a version of MB on here as well. If you look under the latest apps right here, or you can search for it, MB Server. Jellyfin is a free and open source version of MB, and it's got a few features that MB doesn't have, and I like it better. So I'm gonna look at Jellyfin, hit install. It's gonna make us install Docker as well. And I want to enable port forwarding over the internet so we can, access this from outside. So Docker is needed, but guess what? It's gonna install that for us. So there we go, install. Now I've installed Jellyfin on a few different NAS units, and I actually like it best on my ASUSTOR NAS. For one, this NAS is very nice and fast, so it has no problems playing back 4K, videos and stuff like that. X.265 is totally fine on this. But the other thing I like about this is it was extremely easy to set up, and I didn't run into a million permissions problems like I did on some of the other NAS units on the market. So I use Jellyfin. Pretty much the main thing that I use my NAS for is I love Jellyfin. So it's setting that up, and then we can basically catalog and organize our entire media collections of movies, anime, whatever. All right, we need to configure some shares, right? So click on the File Explorer here. Here's the shares we already have, and you can just use it as is. It's got some shares already set up here. These are essentially going to appear as totally separate drives. They're not physical hard drives, but when you map them or when you look at them, imagine each one of these is its own separate drive. Now, a lot of people just use it as it is, the home server. Don't mess with the Docker. That's where Jellyfin is, and any other Docker applications will be installed right here, so don't mess with that. But I like to, separate mine out just a little bit more. So I'm going to create one more share. What we need to do is right-click on ADM and create new shared folder. Here we go. I'm going to add a new share, and I'm going to call this one just games. There we go. And then if you have multiple volumes, you can select where to put that, but I only have one volume, so everything's good there. You can encrypt this if you want to. Now, if you're doing something with sensitive data, I would totally recommend using encryption. I'm just putting some games on there, so I don't need to, but yeah, you'll have to set up a password. Do not lose the password for the encryption, or you will really mess yourself up. So there we are, games. Next, I'm going to do read and write for all users, that's fine. But you can set it up based upon different users or groups or whatever. Next, finish. How do we map some of these drives to our computer? Well, we don't do that from within inside the ASUSTOR interface. We have to do that from within Windows. So press Windows key R, and it'll bring up this run command right here. All right, we need to do //. That's going to be a network location, and then type in the IP address of our ASUSTOR. So that is our IP address. We don't need any ports. Press enter. All right, it's going to pop up and ask us our network credentials. Now we can just put in our network credentials here that we created for admin and do remember our credentials. After a few seconds there, it showed up and here's all of our different shares. Let's say you want to have these appear as a hard drive on your computer. Well, that's very easy to do. All you need to do is right click on this, go down and click Map Network Drive, and then select a drive letter. Can tell it to reconnect its sign in. If you have multiple different NAS units, you may need to connect using different credentials, but we don't need to do that since I already put in the credentials, and then hit finish. And now, every time we open up our computer, this PC, we'll see our W drive, and that will be what we just set up. So you can map as many of these as you want to. Like I want to map my media and have that be a hard drive. And you can set it up to whatever drive letter you like. So that'll have it on each computer as a drive that's just there on your computer. So I've already installed a couple of backup apps, but they're turned off right now. I wanted to turn them on now so I could show you. So we have our data center, or our data sync center, and our cloud backup center. I think they're named a little strangely because the data sync center is far easier to use and it's better for most home users. Cloud backup center is for like the power users who want to, take full control and be able to upload things to Amazon S3 and everything. So I'll show you the data sync center first. And it allows us to create tasks saying like, hey, I want to upload to a different cloud service. So we have different cloud services here we can pick from. If you have a Microsoft account, you can use your Microsoft OneDrive account and upload stuff, or you can click on Google Drive, and then when you hit authorize, it's just going to pop up and do like an OAuth thing where you just sync it up with your account. So that didn't take too long. Now it has a synchronization type. We can do one way or two way. And if you're doing this for like, your Google Drive, and you want to have the documents that are on your Google Drive also available on your NAS, this is a good thing to do, being able to use two-way. And I'm going to leave this unchecked. I don't want Google Drive to synchronize suspected malicious files. All right, now we have to pick our local and remote paths. So let's pick our local path here. And I'm only going to do my home folder. And inside here, I'm just going to have a docs folder. But you can do whatever you like. You can set it up to sync up whatever folders you like. But I'm having it sync up my docs folder there. And then I'm going to pick my remote folder. So right now it's opening up my Google Drive and looking at all the stuff that's there. So just give this a second. All right, there it shows, hey, my drive. So if you want to back up everything, you just click on my drive and hit OK, and it'll back up everything on your Google Drive. I just want to back up my Zweihander folder. I don't really use the Google Drive anymore. As you can see, it's all the way back from Crit TV days. Photo shoot I did with Brian wearing some of the Epic Pants merchandise. And then that's it. You can do more if you want, but there we go. And we're going to synchronize. You can pick the days you want it to synchronize. But I've got it synchronizing all the time. But if you only want it to synchronize like once a week or something to save resources, you can do that. Now, if you want to only get your videos or audio widow files, you can put check marks here. But I want everything, so ignoring that and just moving right along. Now it's going to sync everything from my Zweihander folder to my home/docs folder. I probably should have titled that Zweihander, but I didn't have a plan going in, and you will, so don't worry about it. All right, there we go, synchronizing. So you're not limited to just using one. You can use Baidu if you want to. Hi, everybody in China. You can use Microsoft OneDrive, Dropbox, whatever you like, even ASUSTOR NAS. So it's really simple and easy to use. When you open that up, it's going to be like, hey, log into your Microsoft account. Easy. All right, let's open up this Easy Sync Manager again, and we'll show you how this works. First time you open it up, it's going to say, hey, do you want to download this for your desktop, for your computer? Yes, let's do that. And we also have some QR codes there for the App Store and the Google Play Store. So here's our desktop apps. We want to come down and grab a copy, click on Software Downloads. There we go. Easy Sync. Windows download. Install it on our computer. Launch ASUSTOR Easy Sync. Now check this out. There's this program. Hit start. Now we're going to put in our host IP or cloud ID. Now if you're remote, you can still connect to this, but you'll need to use a different IP address. So that's possible, but that's beyond the scope of this video. I'm going to go ahead and click on the secure connection. For my secure connection, which was 6556, hit next. All right, now we can start selecting our folders to back up. So I want to do my PC to the NAS here. Let's just say I want to do my documents folder. Sure, okay, documents. Now we need to set a location on the NAS for it to be backed up to. There's our Easy Sync folder. We can create a new folder and just call it documents or whatever. That's it. There we go. Underneath there, now we have documents. Okay. Hit next. Now this is a filter. Let's say you don't want to back up any videos that are in your documents folder. Well, we can say okay, I just want to back up my documents, but not videos. I don't want any music files if there's anything in there. I'll take the pictures. But if you don't want applications like exe files and stuff, you can say only back up a few things. I want to back up my entire folder, so I'm going to leave all of this unchecked. And I'm going to make sure this is set to 0 so that it'll back up everything. Because this will, maybe if you set this to something huge, like you don't want any really big files or something, you can do that. I'm going to leave it alone, click finish, hit OK. So it's syncing from my local computer. There we go, all that stuff right there, just the whole folder. And I find it to be a really handy way to back stuff up that's on your computer to the NAS. Another thing I like to do is get an external USB hard drive. Click on external backup and then create a backup for that. There's no external devices plugged in right now, but once you get one, you can create an external backup and then set which folders you want to back up. So just set your important folders, hook them up to an external backup, and that way everything will always be backed up. All right, once your page gets filled with apps, the new apps go to the next page. So on the next page, we have our Cloud Backup Center. Hit start. Now, Cloud Backup Center will allow you to back up to, this is like more of an enterprise grade thing or a commercial grade thing, high levels. This is like office stuff. I don't know. So you can pick what you want here, whether it's Amazon S3 or Microsoft Azure or whatever. And then when you hit next, you need to put in your storage account name and your storage account key. If you're doing this with Amazon S3, you're going to need your access and your secret key that you'll have to generate. That goes beyond the scope of this video. I think for most people, when you're first getting started, it's fine to use the other app, but it's nice to know that we have both of these options available. You can use both of them for different things as well. So make sure that you've got your backup locked down. Now, after we have all of that finished, we want to click on Dr. ASUSTOR and just see what it is that we have forgotten to do. I've purposely forgotten to do a couple of things like my SSH and stuff like that, just so I can show you how this works. So Dr. ASUSTOR is going to look at your system and say, hey, here's the problems that you have right now, or here's the issues that we want to make sure we take care of. So we have not scheduled the antivirus. We've installed it, but there's no scheduling. So we need to do that. So while we're here, I can just click on the little clam AV thing, and we can add a task. There we go. All folders. This is just full scan. And then I'm going to schedule this. Schedule now? No, I'm going to schedule it daily, but I want it to be when I'm asleep. So what time do I go to sleep? About 3 in the morning. I'm definitely going to be asleep at 3 in the morning. So every day at 3, it's going to do a full scan. This can use some resources, but as long as I'm asleep, it should be fine, right? You don't have to do daily, but I mean, the other thing is that we're on Linux here. You know, this is based on Linux. So it's already going to be hardened to viruses in the sense that there are not as many Linux viruses as there are, you know, whatever else. So we have to tell it what we can do here. Scanned maximum file size. I want to scan even the big files. And then when we're finished, we have our default action. We can report only or move to quarantine. Sometimes if there's a false positive, it'll move something to quarantine that I need. So I'm just going to say report only. All right, when you're typing your task name in here, you can't put spaces like, see, exclamation part. It won't let you do that. So I'm just going to do that. It's silly, but there we go. Schedule, all that's good. You can set this up however you like and then hit save. Now this is scheduled, so that checkbox is finished. SSH port. Oh, what's going on? Do we have our SSH port exposed? All right, so we need to fix that. Anything else? Data backups. We just set that up. And then snapshots. So those are the 3 things: SSH, data backups, snapshots. Let's take care of this. And these are all very important, interesting things. So I'm just going to minimize this. It'll live up here on the top. If we forget, we can always click again and be like, what do we forget? Oh yeah, SSH. And what's nice is inside the menu here, once you get to the health check, you can actually click and it'll open things for you. So right now it says SSH is enabled. I don't want that to be enabled. And if it is enabled, I certainly don't want it to be the default port of 22. So I'm going to disable the SSH. Now SSH will allow people to log in to your terminal, which is like the base of your operating system. I mean, people still need the name and password. And if you have your admin account turned on, that's even more dangerous because then they just need to figure out your password. So leave that off. Hit apply. And what I do is if I ever need this, I enable it and I change the port numbers. So that's what I do. So I also, just while I'm here, just make sure this is off too. But yeah, it's all good. All right, so that's fixed. Antivirus scheduling is fixed. SSH is enabled. SSH port is enabled. The default port is being used. I love that it tells us all these things. And then we have our data backups, which we just talked about. And we set those up, but this won't appear if you've already set those up, even if you've plugged in your USB in the back. Now let's talk about snapshots. What are snapshots? Well, since we're using BTRFS on this machine, we can enable snapshots. And snapshots are a beautiful thing. I don't want to get too nerdy about this because it can sound confusing, but if you're curious as to how this works and how like these other files don't take up 100% of the space, like each file in the past does not take up the whole space of that file. It doesn't back up the entire file every time. It uses magic, and that magic is called block level synchronization. It's part of the file system that we have installed here on this NAS. If you're curious about that, just put in, how does block level synchronization work? And there's some pretty good YouTube videos that'll come up. In fact, I'll link one of them in the description. It's, if you don't care, just know that it's nerd magic and it works. So what we need to do is we need to schedule some snapshots. Right there, schedule backup. And I want to do a weekly backup. And we can pick the hours that we do the backup. See here, I want to do it. I like doing things at 3 a.m. There we go, just to make sure I'm in bed. You should go to bed at 2 something. There we go. All right, schedule the backup. We don't have any snapshots yet. The beautiful thing about snapshots is they don't require a ridiculous amount of time to create because they're not making a full copy of everything on your drive. That's not how that works. Create a snapshot right now. And there we go, that's the snapshot. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. That's it. We've created a snapshot. All right, so let's delete something and then get it back because of that snapshot that we just made. I'm gonna delete, I'm just in a random folder here just to show you. Authors.txt inside my Doom folder. Delete. Oh no, my authors.txt file is gone from my Doom folder. How do I get it back? All right, so if we want to get that file back, what we can do is go over to our snapshots manager. And once you get here to overview, it just tells you what's going on. Here's the task, here's the snapshots that have been created. Click on volume, there's our volume right there. And then it'll tell us the snapshots we have here. They're all going to be listed here. You'll see the date that they were created. Click on preview. And it's going and looking at your drive from that time. So in my games folder and in my installed folder, I had a copy of Doom. And scroll down, there's the authors.txt file we just deleted. So right click on that and we can download it or open it. There it is. So now I've got the backup. I've got the file again. So that was really, all right, so there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope this helped you out. Hope this gave you some ideas of what you can do with your NAS. If you have any other tips or any other things you love to do when you first get a NAS, let me know. We didn't go over some of the specialty apps like ASUSTOR Live, but you can always come over and look through the apps and determine what you want to install on your own. The ASUSTOR portal is pretty cool because you can plug this straight up to an HDMI, have this in your living room, and have this thing be the device that plugs into your TV instead of having to use a separate computer. So you can do that if you want to. I use a separate computer, but you know, if you wanted that option, you can totally do that. You can just plug up a little computer with the USB on the back and the HDMI on the back of the ASUSTOR NAS itself. So it becomes your NAS and a little computer for slinging media into your eyeballs. If you want to see like special videos on some of the other things here, if you're curious, let me know and maybe I'll make some time and go through them. But for now, I think we've got a nice solid NAS up and running. So enjoy it and I'll see you in the comments.